on this spiritual journey, it's so important that we learn how our guides, our spirit guides, communicate with us, because there's so much guidance and so much energy and wisdom and love that they transmit through the ways that they communicate us and guide us. They're always with us. They're with us for our whole incarnation and multiple incarnations and lifetimes. So that when we can learn to actually hear and get used to how they communicate with us, then we can hear more from them, when we're actually looking out for the ways that they communicate to us and opening to those pathways. So I have a list here to help me. One of the most common ways that they communicate is through dreams. The dream space is very powerful for spiritual communication because your barriers are lowered and your mind is more, relaxed and open and receptive to messages and insights and communication from your guides. And this is also because more things are possible in the dream space. They can communicate to us in kind of more abstract and artistic ways, which they like doing. They like to give cryptic messages. Because if everything was laid out clear for us, there wouldn't be any point in being here, because there's nothing to learn if everything was explained perfectly, So that's a very powerful way they communicate with us. And your guides might prefer a communication style. Maybe they communicate to you more in dreams, or maybe it's, you hear messages in your head, or maybe it's more kind of like you see signs here and there, like an advertisement that might align with what you're doing or what you're thinking of doing. So dreams are very powerful, but your guides or your master guide might communicate. They might prefer like a specific form of communication. Each guide is different, and each guide has a different personality. You might have multiple guides working with you that communicate differently too. So another big one is hearing messages in your head. You might just hear something, like almost like someone talking. It might still be your voice, but you hear a message that it doesn't really sound like you. Like it might not be the way that you talk. It might be something that you wouldn't really know, or something that you wouldn't really say. For example, like they might say, you're on the right path or something. They might give you words of reassurance that, you might not often say to yourself. So we might hear these kinds of messages. Or sometimes it's just like a sentence that's dropped into your head and you kind of like translate it. Another powerful thing that they like to communicate with is visions or flashes of imagery, or we might see things. This is really powerful. If you're just kind of like sitting, or maybe even in meditation, that's a time where spiritual communication is heightened, especially in meditation. But if you're just sitting somewhere, or you're walking around, or doing whatever, and you get a sudden vision or a flash of something, that's often your spirit guides showing you something, communicating with you. Because this way is very powerful. And it often takes a lot of energy for our spirit guides to communicate with us, because they're beings of light, or they're in the spirit world, and they have to kind of lower the vibration of their messages to come down to the physical realm where we can interpret them. I'm not saying that the actual vibration of the messages gets denser and like worse. They have to adjust their messages so that they can actually enter into the physical plane, and then we can receive them. So it's actually kind of difficult for them at some times to reach us, which is why these visions often come in flashes, because they have to give it like a big burst of energy to transmit these things, rather than like a long played out kind of like almost like IMAX movie video vision, right? This is why they come in flashes. So these vision flashes are very powerful. They can often be associated with past lives or our future. You know, this stuff is so powerful, the way they communicate with us. Another way is through animals. They will often send an animal in our direction to either bring us a message or kind of shift our state of thinking for a bit. Maybe it's an animal that was you know, one of our grandparents' favorite animals, and they send that to us, and then that makes us, you know, that softens us a little bit because we think of our grandparent. Or maybe they might even take the form of an animal. This is a lot more rare, but they might take the form of an animal to send you some sort of message. And there are whole books on, you know, spirit animals and animals. There's one called Animals Speak by Ted Andrews, which talks about, you know, what messages the animals bring for us. And this was often how guides communicated with the Native Americans back, you know, in the 1800s and or kind of around that time when they were you know, pretty active in the rituals and shamanism and that kind of thing. The spirit guides would take the form of animals and then communicate with the Native Americans, because this was a way that was understood and accepted, rather than the spirit guides showing up as like beings of light or, you know, a form of energy. That the animal communication was more palpable and better accepted by the Native Americans, and the Native Americans got so much wisdom from this kind of form of communication, and that's why animals were so prevalent in their culture. It's because the spirit guides would often take the forms of the animals to communicate with them. Another very powerful way they communicate, and this is the last one on my list, but there's so many ways. These are just the main ones. Another way is through energy or feelings. We might get a random like flash of energy or a random hit of a feeling. And oftentimes that can be our guide or spirit guides almost like injecting us with a bit of energy or a bit of emotion or feeling for some specific reason. I remember one time I woke up and I literally felt like a woman. It was like, you know, spirit had gave me a huge hit of feminine energy for some reason. And I knew it was some reason for healing, like a beneficial reason. But they can actually just, you know, give you a chunk of energy or a feeling for some sort of healing reason. So this is a powerful way too. You might also feel a feeling or a sense of when your guide is present in your field or is more close to you energetically. You might get to know their kind of energy signature for when they're around. So this is just so powerful when we learn to know how our guides like to communicate with us, then we could just be more open to this powerful guidance and love from them.